The next day, I'm driving down Highway 12, getting on I-5. There's a guy, north. I pull onto I-5. I never pick up hitchhikers. Never have once in my life. Ever pick up a hitchhiker. I'm on I-5. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, God, you seriously telling me I need to pick this guy up? Because that's what I started feeling convicted about. And God was saying that. He was saying, you need to turn around, and you need to go pick that guy up. Oh, but, you never know what's going to happen. You just don't know. And I'm not advising people go start picking up hitchhikers. I'm not saying that. But God prompted me, and He prompted me, and I'm not saying He's going to prompt me every time I see a hitchhiker. So by the time I actually agreed and stopped wrestling with it, I was at Peltier Road. I had to turn around there. It was probably a good 15, 20 minutes. I was meeting England that morning for breakfast, for a prayer breakfast. So I turned around. I'm thinking, because I'm thinking about the day before when the guy walked away, right? I'm like, this is a test. I got this one nailed, right? So I'm driving down I-5. I get off on Highway 12. I turn down Highway 12. Oh, he's still there. Oh, man. He's still there. I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going through with this. And so I pulled up and pulled to the side, and the guy was over there, so he's kind of looking at me, so I didn't know what to do, but I flashed my lights, like, yeah, come on in, go. So he brings his stuff and gets in. And he was a young man who just got out of the Army 8 months before and was hitchhiking to see his brother in Washington from Arizona. And we had a good talk for 30 minutes up to Sacramento, and I did say at the end of it, I'm having a prayer breakfast with my buddy. I'll buy you breakfast if you want to, come hang out with us. He's like, I'm on a time schedule, no thanks, but appreciate it, And I said, God bless, And it wasn't like I had shared with him a huge testimony or witnessed to him or anything, but I was a link in whatever God's plan was for that individual. Maybe I kept him safe. I don't know. Maybe I planted a seed. Maybe I watered a seed that was already planted. But the point is, you step out in faith, and once again, I had this amazing feeling of just not, oh, look what I did. It wasn't that. It was a feeling of just this emotion of just like, where's this coming from? This joy that was like, I'll tell you the truth, I've never cried for joy. Has anybody ever cried for joy here? Because I found out what it was like to cry for joy in the last month. I've done it several times. And I've never done that before. That's when you're like laughing, and then you have some tears, and that's when I go, I'm going crazy. Because I sell neuroscience drugs that deal with mental issues. And I just like, this is classic. I think I'm going bipolar disorder here. And I'm like, I'm crying, but at the same time I'm laughing. How does this work? Okay, because I've never done that before, but that's what the power of God can do in your life. Oh, let's see. So I ended up meeting with Wayne, and I shared everything with him all the way up to that point. And of course, he was enjoying all of it very much, I think. And then he ended up sharing with me that he's been praying for about a year or so for someone to step up that he can mentor in the ministry. And he said, he felt like this might be an answer to what you've been praying. And that in order to be sure that this was of God, we needed to pray the next weekend and come to meet again. So we scheduled a meeting the following Tuesday. That was Thursday. And I'll say this. I went there with the thinking that I was going to get some direction on Bible college and stuff, not here. Because I did tell God, when the door opens up, I'm going to step through it. That's how I feel like God's going to work in my life. I don't know. I'm not an expert at interpreting God's every command, but if there's a door, I'm stepping in it. And that's what I've told God I'm willing to do. And when he told me this, I was like, it took me a while to process this at home because, what more of an intimidating place to start your ministry mentorship in a place that everybody knows you. I would think it would be much easier just to go to Bible college, do my college, go somewhere where people don't know me, and then start there. I honestly think that would be easier. And so when he told me that, I was like, oh, wow, that was a little bit more than I expected. But so I prayed with it over the weekend, and we agreed to meet over the weekend. That Saturday evening, I felt like, hey, I'm praying for clarity. God's answered my questions, answered my prayers before. I'm doing this again. So I did. I prayed for clarity. I said, God, let me know if this is what you want me to do. Let me know if you want me to stay here in Stockton and to do whatever, continue working if that's what it is, go to Bible college, and then start to work on my ministry here. And then I felt like, and this is how God works, I felt like he said, you need to hear the sermon tomorrow morning. He didn't say that, but I just felt like I have to be at the sermon I really need. And it wasn't right then. It was just later on in the evening. I was like, I really need to hear that sermon tomorrow morning. I feel like he can speak through me through that sermon. So Sunday morning, it wasn't Pastor Wayne preaching the sermon. It was the chaplain from the head police chaplain. You guys remember that guy? So he preached a sermon on Noah and his faith. And he went all about Noah and all about the faith that he had. we're talking about a guy who was supposed to build an ark for 100 years, whatever it was, because it was going to rain, and rain had never happened before. Not that, and biblically, since we never, rain had never happened before, and he's supposed to sit there and say, with total faith, yes, God, I'll build a boat for this rain you're talking about. So anyhow, that's what he went over. But in that sermon, what really spoke to me was his testimony. He shared his testimony a little bit in that. And he shared how he went to the Midwest. Once he left this area, went to the Midwest, he was pastoring over there. He had a successful, I don't know the exact details, but God, everything was going good. But then he felt, for some reason, God was telling him to come back to Stockton. And so he shared. He said this. He said, the work for you now is in Stockton. And I think he repeated it twice. I looked at my wife. My wife looked at me. And I'm like, okay, I got it. Because he didn't say I felt it was, he said it in words that were said right towards me. Okay, and so you think, well, that's kind of a coincidence. Well, no, it's not. That's how God works. Because when you think that, that's Satan pulling wool over your eyes once again. You have to be sensitive to what God's saying, because as soon as you aren't sensitive to that, you miss out on what God wants to do for you. So, that just to kind of nail that nail in the coffin, to really just drive that point home, I went home Sunday afternoon, and I got my Purpose-Driven Life book out because I was doing it on a daily basis and I hadn't done it yet. And I was like, okay, I need to jump in this real quick because my parents are coming over for lunch, and I got about 15 minutes. Because I wasn't really, I was like, yeah, okay, here, stop. Open up my book, turn to the next chapter I'm on, and I don't pre-read these things in advance so I can set up these incidences. And it says, and in the story of Noah we see, are you serious? And it goes over the whole story of Noah and faith and having faith and what he did and everything. And I'm just like, okay, that was like God. That's God's way of saying that message was for you. Yeah, it was for everybody, and it meant something different for all of you. But especially that part about staying in Stockton and doing what he had to do, that was for me. And then having faith and believing and stepping out and believing, just knowing that God has everything under control. So I was like, okay, I got it. I understand. So now here, then I met with Wayne that following Tuesday, and it's just agreed, hey, I'm on board with whatever, wherever this opens up. And I started Bible college that next. I've been going to Bible college on Thursday nights over in with the Nazarene District Institute of Ministry, and that's the doors that were opening, and I was stepping through them. But then, so here comes the real test. So you thought all these little tests were in play. You thought all these layers were being peeled, and I had to take faith in all those things. And if I hadn't been able to take those faithy things, then this would have been very hard to do. I work as a pharmaceutical sales rep. Pharmaceutical sales rep, you're in offices, you're talking to doctors, you have a company, corporation, huge corporation, you might as well be working for the government. Everything's taken letter of the law. They say, you need to be in your office, and you need to make these amount of calls in your office. Now that culture has changed a little bit as we've gone on in our job, but basically, if you don't meet those call obligations, all they know is you're not working. Not that you've been if you sat in an office and you didn't see a doctor and you didn't get to make that call on that doctor because something happened, like life happens, then as far as they're concerned, that 45 minutes, you weren't doing anything. You were probably, playing video games at home, it's just that they don't give you credit for. So there's like this gray area that you had to work within, which is if I spend an hour in an office talking to the staff, talking to the inmates, talking to whoever, and I never did get a chance to talk to the doctor, then I would probably go home that night and say, yeah, I talked to the doctor. Or if I'd just seen that doctor 3 weeks in a row, and they don't want to see me a fourth time, and I've got a weekly routing to this guy because that's what my company is basically saying I need to do with this guy. He doesn't want to see me 4 weeks in a row. He's already told me, come into my office twice. That's the most I need to do in my office. But my company's saying, go see him 4 times. So you're like, okay, well, I'll say I saw him, but I'm doing what's best for my business in a logical sense, but I'm lying to my company. That's really what it comes down to. So that Wednesday, I talked to Wayne that Tuesday, agreed. That Wednesday morning, I'm driving to work, and all of a sudden I felt really convicted by this. And I'm like, because once again, my whole desire is to grow closer to God. And I cannot grow closer to God if I've got things like my conscience telling me now, what you're doing is wrong. Right? I can't. That's it. I can't go any further now. And all of a sudden, I start making these connections, and I'm like, God's prompting me, I can't do this job with gray area. I need to quit my job. Well, I called Chris, and he's like, well, maybe the first step you should do is talk to your manager. So I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I was like, maybe I'll go talk to my manager first and let him know what's going on rather than just saying, because I don't have any other job. I didn't have any leads. I don't have, I have kids. I need benefits. I mean, all these security things that we think about when God really is in control of all that. But those are all things we think about that Satan holds over us, so we aren't free to do what we need to do to move forward. So I knew that I had to work in a black and white area. And so thankfully, that was on the 23rd of May. That was Wednesday. I went on vacation to Pinecrest weekend. I had a nice retreat, and I was able to really reflect and talk to other people about this and really feel. And I knew I was going to be doing the right thing, and this is what God wanted me to do. And I think God planted that and convicted me of that because he knew I was going to have a weekend to talk with people and to fellowship and to have like a peace about that before I really had to do what I felt like I needed to do, which was talk to my boss, which honestly I think it might be more difficult in the standpoint of saying, hey, I'm doing these things that are wrong that, by the way, you can fire me for, than saying I just quit. So when I got home from vacation, I was feeling really burdened about it. I called my manager. He didn't answer. He went to voicemail, left a message saying I need to. So he sent me a text, hey, meet with me tomorrow. So that would be Tuesday morning. I would meet with him this morning. I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of these things happen after I've met with my spiritual accountability partner. Does God do that on purpose? But I think he does. Because he knew that I needed some encouragement with him. And so I had that meeting with him, and I met with my manager, and I told him all about everything. I told him what I was convicted about. I told him what I was doing that I felt was wrong, that I wasn't going to do that anymore, that I had to live in a black and white area, because if I didn't have that clear conscience, then I would not be able to continue doing this job. And that might mean that my actual frequency was what we call it, or targeting, wouldn't meet the goals that I have set. Whatever it is, but this is how I have to work. And here's how God works. So my manager, I knew he went to church, but I didn't know if he was a Christian. What level, I could say, of spirituality and where he was with God. And he goes, and it was like he totally understood exactly what I was saying. And he's like, I understand everything what you're saying. I totally get it. And he shared a little bit of his testimony with me and how he got to Sacramento, where he got to Sacramento because of doors that opened up, that God opened up in his life, and that he leads a Bible study weekly in his home. And I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Here I am coming forward thinking I'm probably going to get fired like in the next week or so. And then he's sharing these things with me. So I felt, once again, on stepping out in faith, rewarded by that. I felt just a sense of peace. But no matter what had happened, I was okay with that. That's what was important, and God knew that. So one of the Bible verses that's really been keeping me kind of centered in this whole ordeal and where things are going on was Isaiah 26:3, where it says, you, Lord, give perfect peace to those who put their trust in you and keep their purpose firm. Or in other translations, steadfast in their ways. And so I always knew that I just keep putting my foot forward and just trusting God, and that he would work everything else out. Well, I got a call a week later, and I just prayed for humility that morning. So be careful what you pray for sometimes, but it's in your best interest. And my manager said that he was wrestling with the whole idea and everything that was going on. He just felt like he needed to call HR. So he did. And he said, they're going to be opening an investigation. So naturally, that was not what I wanted to hear, but I never felt really apprehensive about it. I didn't. I felt at peace with it. I felt good. I knew this is, I put everything out and laid it all out for God. And God's working in the way he wants to work. That's the way it is, then that's the way it's going to be.